I never imagined I'd be sitting here at 68 years old, staring out this cracked window at the autumn leaves swirling like ghosts in the wind, forcing myself to relive the nightmare that nearly broke me. My hands tremble now, not from age, but from the weight of secrets I've buried for too long. You see, some betrayals cut so deep they scar your soul, and mine came from the one person I built my entire world around. My son, Thomas, or at least, the boy I raised to be a man. But as I sip this bitter coffee in my empty kitchen, the memories flood back like a storm I can't outrun. It started with a wedding invitation that never came, and ended with a reckoning that shattered us both. Let me tell you my story, raw and unfiltered, because if I don't speak it now, it might die with me, and some truths demand to be heard. It was a crisp fall morning in 2023 when I pulled up to that grand estate on the outskirts of Portland, my old Ford truck looking like a relic among the gleaming Mercedes and Teslas in the lot. I'd driven 3 hours from my modest home in Eugene, my heart pounding with a mix of pride and nervousness. Thomas was getting married to Elena, the daughter of some high society tech executive. I'd scrimped and saved for years to make this day perfect for him. $15,000 on that custom suit he wore, another $20,000 on the venue deposit, not to mention the countless other expenses that added up like bricks in a wall I was building for his future. But as I stepped out, adjusting my best shirt, the one I'd ironed twice that morning, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The air smelled of fresh-cut lilies and expensive cologne as I approached the entrance. Guests milled about in tailored outfits, laughing softly under the canopy of string lights. I clutched the small wooden box in my hands, a family heirloom, an antique pocket watch that had belonged to my father, engraved with words of wisdom I'd hoped Thomas would cherish. "Dad," his voice hit me like a slap when he spotted me from the foyer. Thomas, tall and polished in his tuxedo, strode over with Elena trailing behind, her gown a cascade of ivory silk that I'd helped finance without a second thought. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone low but sharp, eyes darting to the guests nearby as if I were a stain on the marble floor. I froze, the box suddenly heavy in my grip. "Son, it's your wedding day. I came to celebrate, to give you this." I held out the gift, my voice cracking just a bit. Inner thoughts raced through my mind. Memories of pushing him on the tire swing in our backyard when he was 5, his laughter echoing like music. How had we come to this? Had I failed him somehow? Elena's face tightened, her perfectly manicured hands clasping Thomas's arm. "Thomas, we talked about this," she whispered, but loud enough for me to hear. "Immediate family only. This is delicate." Delicate. The word stung. I'd raised Thomas alone after his mother, my dear Lydia, passed from the damned illness when he was just a toddler. Breast cancer, they said, but it felt like fate robbing me of my anchor. I'd poured every ounce of myself into him, working double shifts at the mill, skipping vacations, building a small logging business from scratch just to give him the life I never had. And now, standing there, I felt like an intruder in my own son's world. "Thomas, I paid for half of this," I said quietly, gesturing to the opulent hall, the crystal chandeliers casting prisms on the walls. "The flowers from that fancy importer in Seattle, the band, everything to make it special for you." He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "Dad, it's not about the money. Elena's family, they're particular. You know, with your background, the logging, the rough edges. It doesn't fit the vibe here." Rough edges. I thought of the calluses on my hands from years of hauling timber, the scars from accidents that could have killed me. Those rough edges had funded his private schools, his Ivy League education at Yale, his summers interning at fancy firms in Silicon Valley. Regret twisted in my gut. Had I spoiled him too much? Given him everything without teaching him gratitude? "Son, please," I murmured, my voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I'm your father." A few guests turned, whispering behind champagne flutes. Elena's father, a stern man in a bespoke suit, approached with a forced smile. Mr. Harlan, perhaps we should step outside. His tone was polite, but it carried the weight of dismissal, like I was a vendor who'd overstayed. Thomas nodded, his face flushed. Dad, just go. I'll call you later. Don't make a scene. The words landed like a felled tree, crushing something vital inside me. I set the box on a nearby table adorned with silver candelabras, the watch inside now feeling like a relic of a forgotten bond. All right, son, I wouldn't want to embarrass you. As I turned to leave, flashbacks hit me hard. Thomas at 10, clinging to me after a nightmare, whispering, "You're my hero, Dad." Where had that boy gone? The walk back to my truck felt eternal, each step echoing my heartbreak. The estate's manicured lawns blurred through tears I refused to let fall. In that moment, I regretted not being stricter, not making him work summers at the mill like I had at his age. Life lessons I'd skipped, thinking love meant shielding him from hardship. Back in the truck, the engine rumbled to life, but I didn't drive off immediately. My phone sat in the cup holder, and I stared at it, fingers hovering. 35 years of building Harlan Logging from a one-man operation to a company employing 40 souls had taught me resilience. But this was personal. I scrolled through contacts, landing on the bank's business line. A deep breath, and I dialed. First Pacific Bank. This is Karen. How can I help? Karen, it's Robert Harlan, account 458-9921. I need to stop some payments. Urgent. As she verified my details, I watched through the windshield as more guests arrived, oblivious to the storm brewing. Which transactions, Mr. Harlan? All the wedding-related ones. Venue, caterers, florists, photographers, the works. Effective immediately. There was a pause, keys tapping. These are large sums, sir. Are you sure? Absolutely. Circumstances have changed. I recited the authorization codes from memory, years of meticulous business dealings making it second nature. By the time I hung up, a weight lifted slightly, but suspense gnawed at me. What would happen next? Would Thomas realize the depth of his betrayal? I made more calls. To the upscale caterer from Portland's finest, the florist who'd flown in exotic blooms from Hawaii, the string ensemble I'd booked personally. Each conversation was brief, professional, payment revoked. Secure your assets. As I finally pulled away, my phone buzzed, Thomas's number. I let it ring, the sound a small victory amid the pain. The drive home was a blur of regrets and inner monologues. Why had I let it get this far? Flashback to Thomas's high school graduation, me beaming in the audience as he accepted his diploma, whispering later, "Thanks for everything, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." But gratitude faded as his world expanded. College parties I funded, the luxury apartment in New Haven, the European backpacking trip after graduation. Each expense a thread in the web of entitlement I'd unwittingly woven. Home was a quiet cabin on the edge of the woods, logs I'd cut myself years ago. I poured a whiskey, sat by the fire, and let the emotions crash over me. Betrayal burned, but so did love, twisted now into something sharper. My phone lit up again. Voicemails from Thomas, his voice escalating from confused to frantic. "Dad, what's going on? The caterers are packing up. Call me." I listened in the dim light, each message a knife twist. By the third, Elena's sobs in the background. "Everything's falling apart. The flowers are gone. The band's leaving. Fix this." Suspense built in my chest. Had I gone too far? But no, this was justice, a lesson long overdue. I thought of Lydia, how she'd have handled this. Teach him strength, Robert, she'd said before she passed. Not just with money, but with heart. I'd failed at that, but maybe now I could correct it. The next day dawned gray, matching my mood. I opened my filing cabinet, pulling folders thick with records. 35 years of sacrifices documented. Private tuition, $150,000 over 12 years. Yale, $320,000 including extras. Cars, 3 progressively fancier ones, totaling $85,000. Post-grad support, rent, travel, networking, events, another $250,000. Wedding, $180,000 so far. Grand total, over $985,000. Numbers that represented skipped retirements, health scares ignored, dreams deferred. Inner regret surged. Why hadn't I made him contribute? A part-time job, anything to build character. My lawyer, old friend Marcus, met me at his office. Robert, this is solid. We can reclassify as loans if needed. Demand repayment. We drafted the letter. Formal, factual, $985,000 due in 30 days. Courier delivered it that afternoon to their honeymoon suite at a luxury resort. Ironic, since I'd covered that too. Thomas's calls intensified, voicemails pleading, then angry. How could you do this? You're ruining my life. Elena's family chimed in via texts, demanding explanations. But I held firm, silence my shield. Then the backlash hit. Social media posts from Thomas, heartbroken by a father's cruelty, demanding impossible sums after sabotaging our wedding. Shares poured in, local business forums buzzing. Clients called, questioning my stability. Robert heard some troubling things. Anger flared. My reputation, hard-earned through honest labor, under attack. But I had the truth. I scheduled a press meet with the Eugene Register Guard, releasing anonymized records. This is the story of unchecked entitlement, I said, voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. The tide turned swiftly. Articles praised my sacrifice, condemned Thomas's ingratitude. His in-laws distanced themselves. Elena filed for annulment within days. Thomas was left alone, job offers drying up in the tech world where image mattered. Finally, his call came, broken, Dad, I've lost everything. Help me. We talked for hours, me sharing life lessons hard learned. Son, love isn't a blank check. It's mutual respect. I wired a small sum for basics, with conditions, get a job, no more handouts, weekly check-ins as equals. As I sit here now, reflecting, I regret the pain but not the lesson. Thomas is rebuilding, working construction, ironically, learning the value of sweat. We've mended, slowly, but the scars remind us both. Betrayal may break you, but truth can heal. That conversation with Thomas marked the beginning of a fragile bridge between us, one built on the ruins of what had been. But healing doesn't come easy at my age, and the months that followed were a test of wills, his and mine. I remember sitting in my cabin that evening after our talk, the fire crackling like accusations in the hearth. My hands, rough from decades of gripping axes and chainsaws, clutched the phone long after we'd hung up. Inner thoughts swirled. Had I been too harsh? Was this justice or just an old man's bitterness? Regret gnawed at me, not for the actions I'd taken, but for the years I'd let slide by without demanding more from him. Life lessons I'd learned the hard way, starting with nothing after Lydia's death, scraping by on odd jobs until Harlan logging took root. Lessons I'd shielded him from, thinking it was love. Foolish, perhaps, but now, with the truth laid bare, there was a chance for something real. The next morning, I wired the $1,200 as promised, just enough for a week's rent at a cheap motel in Portland and some groceries. No more, no less. Use it wisely, son, I texted. Prove to me, and yourself, that you're more than what you've become. His reply came quick. I will, Dad. Thank you. Simple words, but they carried weight I hadn't heard in years. Suspense built in my chest as days passed. Would he follow through, or slip back into old habits? Flashbacks haunted me. Thomas at 15, begging for that first smartphone, promising it'd help with school. I'd worked overtime to buy it, only for him to lose interest in studies amid the distractions. Patterns like that don't break overnight. A week later, our first check-in call. His voice sounded tired, edged with a humility that was new. I got a job, Dad. Laborer at a construction site downtown. Pays minimum, but it's steady. Shoveling gravel, hauling rebar, stuff like that. I could picture him, his soft hands blistering under the strain, his designer clothes traded for work boots and high-vis vests. Good, I said, keeping my tone even. Stick with it. Remember, character isn't built in comfort. We talked for 20 minutes, about the ache in his muscles, the stares from co-workers who knew his story from the news, the loneliness of a motel room without Elena's presence. No complaints from him, though. That was progress. Deep down, emotion welled up, pride mixed with sorrow. This was the man I'd hoped he'd become, forged in fire I'd had to light. But life doesn't pause for redemption arcs. Back at the logging site, my crew noticed the change in me. Old Joe, my foreman for 20 years, clapped me on the back one rainy afternoon as we oversaw a clear-cut operation. "Boss, you look like you've shed a decade. That boy of yours finally coming around." I nodded, watching the chainsaws bite into fir trees, the scent of sap heavy in the air. "Maybe, Joe, time will tell." Inner regrets surfaced then. Had I been absent too much, buried in work to provide? Lydia's voice echoed in my mind. "Balance, Robert. He needs your time, not just your wallet." I'd failed there, pouring money as a substitute for presence. Lesson learned too late, but perhaps not for Thomas. 2 weeks in, another call. "Dad, the site's tough. Foreman rides me hard because of who I am, or was. But I'm learning how to read blueprints, operate a forklift. It's humbling." Suspense eased a bit. He was enduring. I shared a story from my youth, starting at 16 in the mills, nearly losing a finger to a bandsaw. "Pain teaches, son. Embrace it." Emotion choked me as he laughed softly, a sound I'd missed. Flashback to his childhood. Building forts in the woods, him declaring, "When I grow up, I'll run the business with you, Dad." Dreams derailed by entitlement, but maybe salvageable. Month 1, blurred into 2. Thomas moved to a shared apartment with other laborers, splitting rent from his wages. No more room service, he joked on our call. Cooking ramen and eggs. Lydia's old recipe. Hearing her name from him stirred deep feelings. She'd have been proud of this shift. But challenges mounted. Elena's annulment papers arrived, her family's lawyers citing financial misrepresentation. Thomas confided the hurt. "I thought she loved me, not the lifestyle." I listened, offering no easy comforts. "Love tested in hardship is the real kind, son. Learn from it." Regret for his pain mingled with resolve. This was the crucible. By month 3, whispers reached me through mutual acquaintances. Thomas turning down handouts from old college buddies, insisting on earning his way. Pride swelled, but so did worry. A call came late one night. "Dad, I messed up. Got into a fight at work. Guy called me a silver spoon kid. Lost my temper." Suspense gripped me. Was this a setback? Handled it? I asked. "Yeah. Apologized to the boss. Kept the job." Growth. We delved deeper. His regrets over the wedding snub. How embarrassment had blinded him to my sacrifices. "I see now, Dad. All those years, you gave up so much. I'm sorry." Tears pricked my eyes. Raw honesty we'd never shared. As winter set in, the cabin felt less empty. Thomas visited for the first time in years, arriving in a beat-up truck he'd bought second-hand. We sat by the fire, sharing stories. "Remember the swing set?" he asked, eyes distant. Flashback hit me. Him giggling as I pushed, wind in his hair. "Yeah, son, good times." We talked life lessons, value of hard work, gratitude's power, betrayal's cost. Emotion poured out. My loneliness after Lydia, the drive to provide as atonement. He hugged me goodbye, a real embrace. "I love you, Dad. Working on respecting myself so I can respect you." 6 months passed. Thomas advanced to site supervisor, his hands calloused like mine. Our calls became conversations between equals, advice on bids, shared laughs over industry tales. The scars remained, but they strengthened us. Reflecting now, at 68, I see the suspense of those days as necessary. Pain birthed purpose. Betrayal, it was a mirror, showing flaws we both needed to fix. And justice, it came not in revenge, but in redemption. If this tale moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of the heart's hard roads. Your support keeps these truths alive.